So let's proceed to the chapter capstone case software limited team task. So for the first task, review the macro report shown in figure 841 on page 383. When Carlos showed this report to Mike Fenner, Director of Human Resources, he said that he wanted to see the data grouped by the type of ESIP deduction with appropriate subtotals. Carlo wants you to modify the report design to satisfy his request. You can use Microsoft Access, a report generator, or simply construct a sample layout using any word processing or drawing program. Be sure to show the placement and grouping of all fields. So I use only a Microsoft Office or the Microsoft Word as my word processor. Kay more may available na ho. Wakoy laing types of word processor. So if as you can see, or if you notice the design, the original design, the ordering of the data is through period ending. So mga date kani sila. Pero since Mike wants to or want to order this through ESIP option so hadyang through ESIP option na. So nag order na ang stock purchase plan tanan usap ang mga credit union and naay subtotal kada employee. Since manay gusto nga mahitabo ni Mike. So of course, answers will vary. The markup on figure 841 displays the deductions chronologically by pay period. Changing the grouping field to SIP option and adding subtotals might be the best approach. This issue is similar to the one raised in case in point 8.4 on page 362. The first question is whether screen design is an ergonomic issue that can affect productivity and user satisfaction. Clearly, screens that are attractive, well laid out, and intuitive are likely to please users who will probably make fewer input errors and be more productive. What about user designing their own screens? Is it okay to permit some degree of personal preference or should a standard policy to be used? So of course, the best answers might be it depends. A system analyst's job typically is to set the boundaries for individual preference. If possible, users should be allowed to control their work environment as long as they not adversely affect the information by system, the data itself, and of course the users. The key questions involve the issue of user-driven design. As a textbook points out, the best results usually occur when users manage their own information needs. So, unfortunately, it is difficult to design a system that is both powerful and flexible at the same time, or flexible enough for users to operate without special training and support. To get a better idea of what users really want, you can ask if you could design your own screen, what would they look like? So, muna kasagaran dapat o mag-design ka, dapat mangutana jud sa users if unsa ilang gusto para makaibaw kag asa ka dapat magsugod or asa imong destination. So, depending on the responses, it might be possible either to build in the specific elements or even better to design screens that would give users some flexibility as to the look and feel. Many companies allow users to customize their Microsoft Windows user interface by selecting background colors, icon arrangement, and similar visual design features that do not affect data security or integrity issues. So, na jud tayo mga gisunod nga mga design, mga steps sa pag-design. Depende ra gud na sa atong mga users or what they like or sa atong mga customers, sa atong mga clients. Ingana. So, for the number 2, for the question number 2, task number 2, I mean, Carla Moore also wants employees to have an online information request. From that, they can use to learn more about ESIP options and request up-to-date policies for the ESP accounts. Follow the guidelines and suggestions in this chapter and design an online screen for Carla. So this is my design for the online request information request form. So for the part 1, naadira makita ang mga um, information nga dapat fill-upan sa employee. Diyan, first name basta diyan tanang information, last name, middle, department, as dapit na assign, so diyan position, diyan security system, social security number, diyan telephone, email address, city, then as diyan country, ingana. So for the part 2, naa dito makita ang request information regarding para asa. So if he wants to request ang iyang balance, kinahanglan provide siya sa iyang ASIP accounts para may bawan og inig determine sa iyang balance. So og gusto po niya og ASIP options information na iyang makita. So mag-provide sad siya description of why nganong nahilanan si Jag, nganong nag-request si Jag ingani nga information. Of course, sa usa ka company dili jud basta-basta mo hatag og information without any valid reason. So dapat na ay og mo request og information ang usa ka employee, dapat na jud si Jag valid reason why. So after ma-fill up na tanan, so just click submit form. So mana ang online request form. So sa number 3 is kuan ra siya continuation. Since kini siya online man dire number 2. In number task 3, in addition to being available online, Carla wants the information request form to be available as a paper source document. So gusto niya nga kanang paper source document siya nga na ubang mga employee nga og kita hindi sila makakuan sa online, makagamit sila sa kanang mga documents ra. So this is the document. Just same design, pero ang kalainan na nila is wala ng submit form. Kay dili naman kinahanglan submit form because this is not, of course, online request form. Dili na ka pwede mag-submit form dira because it is a source document, a paper, a document of file. So, number 4, for the task number 4, Carla wants an update on usability, how users read on the web. Review the materials in this chapter and visit the web to learn more about this topic. Summarize the results of your research in a memo to Carla. So, this is my sample memo. So, naggamit ko mga web link or mga sources. Then, hang gi-summarize since mo na ang gusto ni Carla. So, my memo title is Usability, How Users Read on the Web. So, this is to Carla from, of course, I use Southern Leyte State University. Di ko mugamit sa name. Then, date karon sa akong pag-send, then sample rani. So, subject. My subject, of course, is summary results of my research since mao ni ang summary sa tanan ng research. So, for the introduction, when writing for the web, using plain languages allow users to find what they use, understand what they have found, and then use it to meet their needs. It should also be actionable, findable, and shareable. People read differently online than they do when they read print materials. Web users typically scan for information. People have short attention spans when it comes to observing websites, web pages, and content. It follows that your web copy should fit into average users' reading behavior. So, kay man ta, basta naan madjud na siguro nato basta mo ato tag web, basta murag di ta ganahan sa pag title pa lamang wala na sukuhay ay wala na fit sa atong gipangita, dili jud na nato basahon. So sa title pa lamang sa kada blog, sa kada web pages, dapat kuan na siya, findable na siya, dapat shareable na murag maengganyo ang mabasa. Muna for my introduction. So for the background, anyone who's done even a bit research on how people read on the web will have at least head on the notorious F-shaped pattern, at least in passing. Based on solid research, the F-shaped pattern is the most definitive study. So for my background, anyone who's done even a bit of research on how people read on the web will have at least heard of the notorious F-shaped pattern, at least in passing. Based on solid research, the F-shaped pattern is the most definitive study out there on exactly how people read on the web. As the name implies, people read web copy in a F-shaped pattern. A user's main type reading behavior involves the movement of the eyes on a screen and in the three unique true related components. First, reading in a horizontal movement typically across the upper portion of the web copy. Then moving down the page somewhat and then resuming reading in the second horizontal movement that stretches across a shorter area than the first movement. So, ang users na sila lahi nga pamaagi sa pagbasa nila sa web. It's either mubasa na sila sa pilmero o makuha na nila nga murag naiham dito di na nito basahon to nila tong mga tanan jud. So that is for my background. So for the closing, a sad but true fact about internet reading is that many people simply don't bother reading everything on any given page. So yes, that's definitely ang fact or true kay dili jud tanang users ganan mobasa. So imong web pages is taas kaadyo ra. Murag pulaan jud ang tao sa pagtan-aw pa lamang. So this includes your landing page. For instance, according to research done by Slate, many readers will never ever finish reading everything that you paste on a page. If your copy is too long for them to finish, too bulky, or not properly formatted for skimming and scanning, they might miss important message you want to convey. So, ila jud tong ma-miss tong ma-important, especially naa sa kahit tunga daghan pa kang istorya usa pa ang main point nimo. So di jud to nila mabasahan kay di na jud to sila mabasa basta makit-an lamang nila nga taas ng imong mga information. So this obviously makes a really good case for writing a web copy that's short or dapat short, succinct and to the point, or at least breaking longer form content into easy to scan and digestible paragraphs of only a few lines in length. So mas maadyo og mugbo ra siya para easy to read ra siya then isipod nga masabtan siya understandable siya bisan mugbo ra. Kaya basi pag mugbo ra jawa pud ka unod-unod. So dapat mugbo siya at the same time is anang understandable. Kay mas maadyo na to kaysa sa arang taas sa nga daghan pa kang pasikot-sikot di na jud ganahan ang mga users nga mobasa. So let's proceed to another task or a challenge task for the capstone case. So as you can see in the screen, there is 3 fields which include the data item, the description, and examples. So for the task, the team leader wants you to learn about validation rules. Specifically, she wants you to go back to the Microsoft Access Help area and review the explanation of the validation rules and the examples. So for the practice task number 1, create an input mask for each data item shown in the table. So as you can see in the screen, there are 2 fields, the data item and input mask. So when we say an input mask, these are templates that prevent errors and do not allow data entry. So for example, when ordering something online and you enter your phone number and it automatically puts the parentheses around the code and the dashes between the rest of the numbers. So input mask is very important because it helps you to make sure that these are minimal there are minimal errors when it comes to data entry in the section. So for other scenario example, you might use an input mask with a field that stores phone number so that access requires 10 digits of input. If someone enters a phone number without the area code, access won't write the data until the area code data is added. So that is what means about input mask. So for the task 2, for the practice task 2, develop a brief handout that explains the concept of validation rules. Include an example of validation rules that will only accept the letter A or B. So this is the sample handout validation rules. So a data validation rule limits what users can enter into a database. Data validation rules improve into input quality by testing the data and rejecting any entry that fails to meet specific conditions. So data validation rules ensures that inappropriate data is prevented from entering the system. These checks can include data sequence, existence, range, and limits, reasonableness, and validity, among others. A database also can have built-in validation checks. For example, a system can verify that a customer number on an order matches a valid customer number in the customer file. Because the value entered must be referred to another value, the type of check also is called referential integrity. Another validity check might verify that a new customer number does not match a number already stored in the customer master file. So one of the most restrictive types of validation rule is called a validity check because it limits the input to certain specific values. For example, if an inventory system has 20 valid item classes, then any input that does not match one of the valid classes will fail the check. So a validity check also can restrict input to values that are between certain limits. So for example, a rule such as the greater than 100 and less than 1000 will force users to enter values between 100 and 1000. To ensure a user-friendly interface, you can use the validation text properly to display a message as please enter a value greater than 1000 and less than greater than 100 and less than 1000. So in the following example, the user must enter a capital A or B. An input mask is not shown, but it would be good include a mask such as the greater than. To ensure that a single capital letter is entered, use this way input mask and validation rules work well together. So notice that the field size has been limited to one another. So for the challenge, now that you are familiar with input masks and validation rules, your team leader wants you to review two more data items as follows. So the customer ID must include the first capital letter of the customer's last name, followed by the last four digits of the customer's social security number. So the second is the password must include at least 6 and no more than 12 letters or digits. So, for the task 1, create an input mask for the two-dimensional items and the table. So there are two fields, two tables, the data item, which includes first name, last name, category, postal code, customer ID, and password. So the other table includes the input mask. So here, this is the sample answer. So for the second task, create a validation rule that will only accept numbers greater than 10 and less than 20. So when we say validation rule, a validity check also can restrict input values that are between certain limits. A rule such as uh, greater than 10 and less than 20 will force users to enter values between 10 and 20. To ensure a user-friendly interface, you can use the valid text property to display a message such as please enter a value greater than 10 and less than 20. So as you can see this is the sample answer or the sample table, which includes the first table, field, format, input mask, caption, default validation rule, validation text, and required. So that is all the challenge or the task in this overall capstone case in this chapter.